All right, if you've been thinking about relocating to West Denver this year, the May housing numbers tell a really interesting story. Buyers have more choices than they did at the beginning of the year, but they're also becoming more selective. And depending on whether you're looking at Littleton, Lakewood, Golden, or Arvada, the market can feel very different right now. So whether you're actively planning a move or simply keeping an eye on the market, understanding what's happening right now can help you make better decisions. Because while people often talk about the Denver market as one thing, the reality is that Littleton, Lakewood, Golden, and Arvada are telling slightly different stories. So let's just start with the big picture, because today's market update is based on data from Smedra and RE Colorado. And before we jump into the numbers, now remember that real estate statistics are always a little bit of a rearview mirror. These reports show us what buyers and sellers were doing over the last month or two, which helps us understand where the market may be headed next. And that's especially important this month, because we're starting to see some clear differences emerge between the West Denver communities. Now, looking at Denver as a whole, one of the biggest changes that we've seen this year is inventory. So back in January, there were about 7,500 active listings across the Denver metro area. Now today, there are more than 11,000. So what does that mean? It means that buyers are seeing more choices come onto the market than they were earlier this year. And while that gives buyers more flexibility, it also means they're taking more time to decide. They want to take more time to decide which homes are truly worth pursuing. What's interesting is that even with more inventory available, buyer activity hasn't disappeared. Pending sales are still up compared to a year ago, and homes are still selling relatively quickly. So this isn't a market where buyers have stepped away. It's a market where buyers are becoming more intentional. And if you've been following these updates since the beginning of the year, you've probably noticed the story has evolved. So January, well, it felt cautious. By March, we started seeing momentum return, and April showed us that different West Denver cities were moving at different speeds. And well, now in May, buyers have more choices than they've had for much of the year. They're just taking a little more time to make those decisions, but they still are moving forward. They are moving forward when they find that right fit. So let's start with Littleton, because Littleton feels steady this month. We're seeing fewer new listings and fewer closings compared to last year, but pricing has remained remarkably stable. Now, this isn't a market that feels overly competitive, and it doesn't feel particularly slow either. It feels balanced. And honestly, that's been one of the most consistent themes that we've seen in Littleton this year. Now let's talk about Lakewood. Lakewood feels like a market where buyers are taking their time. We're seeing fewer new listings, fewer closings, and some softening in pricing compared to a year ago. Now that doesn't mean activity has stopped. It simply means that buyers have become more patient and more selective. Homes are still selling, but buyers aren't rushing into decisions. Now, well, Golden is interesting because it's telling a different story than it was just a month ago. So last month, Golden was one of the strongest performing markets in West Denver. And this month, well, activity remains solid, but pricing has moderated. And homes are taking a little longer to sell. So rather than accelerating, Golden feels like it's starting to normalize after a very strong spring. And then there's Arvada. Well, Arvada continues to quietly perform well. We're seeing more homes close, buyer activity remains healthy, and demand is still showing up in the market. And at the same time, buyers are taking a bit longer to make decisions, which is creating a more balanced environment overall. So of the 4 cities we're covering today, Arvada may be one of the more stable stories this month. So what's the biggest takeaway from May? The biggest shift isn't that the market is getting dramatically hotter or dramatically cooler. It's that buyers have more choices, and when buyers have more choices, they become more selective, but they're still buying. That's what makes this market so interesting right now, because Littleton, Lakewood, Golden, or Arvada are all telling slightly different stories. Yet buyer activity is still present across much of West Denver. And if you're trying to figure out which part of West Denver might fit your lifestyle best, I've created a playlist called Where Should You Live in West Denver, where I break down Littleton, Lakewood, Golden, and Arvada in a lot more detail. And I'll be sure to link that playlist below. This way you can keep exploring the areas and start narrowing down which community might be the right fit for you. And if you'd like more specific numbers for a particular West Denver city or neighborhood, or even a specific price point, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to break down what's happening in that market and give you a more detailed look at the data and the trends that matter most to you. Until then, remember, life is short, live somewhere awesome, and be well. We'll see you next time.